And some of these questions you're just starting to ask. Some of these questions are maybe new to you. Some of these questions maybe you've been asking for a very long time. All of us are searching for answers, for meaning. And let me lay out a few of the basic questions that we ask, okay? Who am I? Who am I really? Not who do they say I am. Everybody's got an opinion about who you are, okay? You've even formed some idea, your own identity, right? But who are you really? Who are you? So where have I come from? Why am I here? Where am I going? What is my purpose? Where do I belong? How can I live a life that matters? This is what I've been thinking about the last few years. How can I live a life that matters? Because I don't think anybody wants to live a forgettable life. You know, just a life. You really didn't matter. You didn't matter to anyone. You didn't do anything of note. Life maybe was looked at as just kind of a waste of breath. We need meaning. There's something in us that desires meaning in our lives. We know when we're living and our living is meaningless. We know that. So if we know and can perceive when our living is meaningless, that demonstrates to us that life can be lived for meaning and purpose. I can sit here today and I can tell you that if I've done one thing right, I have tried to live my 50 plus years, all 50 of them, with meaning, for purpose. That governs me. Everything that I do, I want to live my life in a way that matters. Who is God? The big question, who is God? Who is God relative to my life? You see, these are questions that we all have. And listen to me, they are questions that do not have simple answers. You need to know that. There are not simple answers. I cannot answer those questions for you today. I cannot answer all of these questions. I can ask a good question, but I don't have all the answers. They're not simple. They're not simple questions, and they're not simple answers. The truth of the matter is these are complex questions, and often the answers to these questions just lead us to deeper questions. They lead us into deeper and deeper questions about our existence, about God. But yet we keep asking the questions. And that's what I want to encourage you to start with today, is I want to encourage you to ask questions. A lot of times you go to church and just questions are not invited. They're discouraged. We're discouraged from questioning, from asking our questions. But we're not afraid. See, I think we're afraid of our doubts. We're afraid of people doubting because we fear that there may not be an answer. I'm not concerned about your questions. I know there's an answer. It may not be readily apparent to me, and I may not have the answer, but I'm not intimidated by them. Do you know something else? Do you know that God is not afraid of your questions at all? He is not afraid of your questions, your doubts. He is not afraid of them. Okay? He invites those questions. He invites you to ask him those questions, to seek for solutions. No, if anything, I'm saying to you, yeah, exactly. Those are the questions you need to be asking. Ask those questions. No, and Josh and I were talking before service this morning, and if you ever talk with me before service, you may end up in my message somewhere. All right? So it's not intentional. It's not intentional, but, I'm getting ready for my message. Anyway, Josh and I are talking this morning, And a few years ago, 5 years back, maybe around there, Josh would have defined himself as an atheist. He said he was an atheist. But you know what? Josh really wasn't an atheist. I mean, he really wasn't, because he'd actually never even thought about it enough. Okay? I mean, you can't say you're an atheist if you never even think about it, if you don't ask the hard questions. Well, why are you an atheist? Well, it just seems to me like a better option than believing. Well, that's not an atheist. You're just unthinking. No offense, Josh. You're just not even really thinking about it. He said, for 24 years I didn't think. So the point is this, and please hear me. It requires us to ask the question. You tell me, I don't believe in God. Well, if you really thought about him, and if you don't believe in God, then what's your solution? What's your answer? What have you come up with? Well, there's just not a God. Okay, well, how do you explain creation? How do you explain the existence of good and evil? What is your overall philosophy for life? How do you explain meaning and purpose and why we seek meaning and purpose? Yeah, I never really thought about all that. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You just determined, not a God. Well, that was easy enough, right? But see, here's the problem with that approach to life. It always leaves you questioning. Have you ever wondered why all these atheists go around all the time telling you they don't believe in God? Well, if you didn't believe in him, why are you still talking about him? You know what I'm saying? I mean, it would be like if I come in here this morning and said to you, you know what? I don't believe in leprechauns. Okay, Pastor, most of us don't. Actually, none of us do. We're actually really glad to hear you don't believe in leprechauns, but that's no real great achievement. You see what I'm saying? If you're not asking the questions, and so I'm saying to you, if you're asking the questions, you're on the right track. Let me try to help you understand this a little bit more. A number of years ago, I was in Russia, and we've done a lot of ministry in Russia. I have good friends that are pastors in Russia. I appreciate Pastor Bob leading us this morning in prayer for the church in Ukraine and in Russia. And I'm talking to this young lady in Russia, and I'm asking them about God. And in Russia, you can walk onto the streets at that point, and you could say to someone, who was Buddha? And they would say, never heard of him. Who is Muhammad? Never heard of him. Who is Jesus Christ? Never heard of him. Never heard that name. I don't have any idea who those people are. No idea whatsoever. So no concept whatsoever of our God as we in a Western world typically think of God or his son Jesus Christ. If I were to ask you today, how many of you have never, ever, ever, ever heard the name Jesus Christ? Would anybody raise their hand? Well, no. I mean, you've heard, and you have formed some opinion. Maybe right, maybe wrong. Right? I mean, how many of you have heard of God? Yeah, I've heard of him. And you have formed some opinion. It may be right, and it may be entirely wrong. Now, let me just ask you this real quick. How many of you could possibly imagine that being wrong could be disastrous? I mean, if you get that question wrong, that's pretty much it. That's the big one. Who is God? It's a big question, and you need to get that one right. So I'm talking to these two young ladies, Russian young ladies, and I said, so then what do you think? They don't know who Jesus is, don't have any idea about God. So then what do you think happens when we die? Again, I'm curious about their worldview, because you may not believe in God, but you do believe in death. Okay? You do believe. Everybody believes at some point in time you're going to die. Nobody believes I'm going to be the first person to ever live forever. All right? So they have contemplated their own mortality. You're going to die. So then what? One girl says, I'm not sure. And then the other girl goes, oh, I know. We float into outer space, okay? We become this glob, and we float into outer space. We eventually land on another planet where we just exist as this energy, this glob of energy, for a long time. Okay. And I looked at her friend and I said, You think she's right? And her friend looks at her and goes, no, that's crazy. That's the craziest thing I've ever heard. But you know what? At least she had thought about it. Somehow. Now, here's what I ask her. Don't you think that if there is a question, then by necessity, logically, there is an answer? Every question has, by necessity, an answer. You may not know the answer, but there's still an answer. So what I'm submitting to you today is that these questions, follow me, who am I? Where have I come from? Where am I going? What is my purpose? Where do I belong? Is there a God? What is the meaning of life? Every one of those questions exists in your heart, and guess what? They exist because there is an answer. Now, how you answer those questions, that's a different matter. Okay? That's a different matter. But the questions exist because there is an answer. So I'm telling you, ask the questions. Don't hesitate. Don't discourage other people from asking these questions. Don't challenge them when they've determined what they already believe. Really? Explain that to me. Why? You have to be able to explain it. You have to be able to explain it. And look, don't be afraid to admit you don't know the answers. I can stand here before you today and say, I don't know the answers. You may come to me and ask me questions, and there are going to be things in which I'm just going to say, I don't know. Here's a thought. Here's maybe. You see, this is one of the problems with the church today. We discourage questions. We don't like people asking questions. We feel intimidated by those questions. We ourselves fear there may not be an answer. Again, I'm confident there is an answer, so don't be afraid to ask the question. Don't be afraid of your doubts. Dallas Willard made this statement. He said, the greatest problem for the gospel of Christ today is not doubt outside the church, but doubt inside the church. Doubt inside the church. The reality is that a lot of us inside the church have no more answers, or at least we're not living those answers, living out those answers in our lives in a way that's meaningful and gives people outside of the church any confidence that we know any more than they do. But again, it's dangerous for us to demonstrate that we have all the answers when we, in fact, do not. Now, again, I'm not going to try. I'm going to be really careful in this series not to be philosophical or too, psychological. It's not my intent at all. Because in this, I want us to understand the role of faith in this long walk. I want us to understand faith. And faith is one of those things that I can't pour you a cup of it. Okay? I can't present it in that way. And you're going to have to be willing to approach it from the standpoint of the theoretical. You're going to have to be able to grasp it, even philosophically. Okay? You're going to have to be willing to do that. And I'm going to do the best I can to connect you. But understand that these things don't come easy, and I'm not going to try to oversell it. See, here's the problem. In the past, whatever you may or may not know about faith, I think that we've oversold it, we've oversimplified it, and we've left people in the congregation largely feeling like, I'm supposed to have faith. Come on, faith. Why do I not have faith? I'm just not feeling it today. Or even worse, something's wrong with me because I don't have faith. And that's not helping. That's not helping anybody on this journey when we condemn people for not understanding it, for not possessing it, for not feeling it. And instead, what we need to do is we need to embrace one another and say, you know what, I'll live this out with you. We'll journey together. Let's figure this out together. So let me say this. I want you to, along the way, beware of easy answers. Easy answers to these quick questions. Quick fixes, chemical or otherwise. Okay? You follow me? That's not the way. The quick fixes. Seek out those who will be your friend. Who will be your friend. Who will love you and not judge you. Those who will listen to you, listen to your questions. But be cautious of those who anxiously avoid the search, the painful search, who nervously want to fill the gaps, the quiet spaces. You know those people, sometimes they just want to give you an answer. They feel like they have to have something to say. Be careful of that. Because what this does is it leaves you susceptible. These quick fixes and these simple answers leaves you susceptible to a superficial search. And inside the questions persist. I don't want you to pretend like the questions don't exist. That doesn't help you or the church. You know, one of the things I think that marks us as a church, here at Generation Church, is that you're free to come and be who you are. No one's going to judge you. You're welcome to come and be who you are. Now, at the same time, we do believe that God is not satisfied with where you're at. The gospel we preach is transformative, that God does want to do a really powerful work in your life. That's the hope of the gospel, okay? Not to leave us as he finds us, but you are welcome just as you are. You're embraced and loved and received, whoever you are. And nobody's going to judge you for that. Lastly, I would say this. Our lives, your life is not a problem to be solved. Okay, now you may have plenty of problems to be solved. But your life is not the problem. Your decisions, your life, your beliefs, all of that has led you to where you're at today, however wrong-headed that has been. But your life is not a problem to be solved. It's a journey. And remember, it's a long journey. It's a long journey that's meant to be taken with Christ as our friend and the finest guide. It's a journey in which you're not meant to go alone. We are meant to journey together. You need people in your life to journey with. If it's your first time here at church, or if you're a regular part of this community, wherever, I don't care. But you've got to find a community, a church, a people, and you got to become one with them. You got to join them in the journey. You cannot do this on your own, period. This is not a solo journey. None of us goes alone. We're not equipped for it. And so to all of us, I would say, seek your answers. Even what cannot be fully known. Listen, there are some questions that I have and you have. We are never going to know the answers. Not until we stand before God in eternity. There are things that we are never going to fully understand. I had a pastor, friend of mine, more of an associate a number of years ago. He had a daughter that was born with a degenerative disease in her lungs. And as she got older, 18, 19, 20, 21, the effects of that disease began to really catch up with her. And at 22 years old, she died. She went on to heaven. And I remember the next time I saw this person, he said, everybody comes up to me and they feel like they want to provide me with answers. But I want you to know, I don't have any questions. I don't have any questions. I don't understand it. And someday I will. But right now, I don't. Someday I have questions now. And someday maybe I will live into the answer. Someday maybe I will know, someday in eternity. But right now, I'm okay. I'm okay. So we search. We ask these questions. We search for solutions. And we look, each one of us, for the answers. I want to read a quote to you. Henry Nouwen stated, to live the questions, get them to change that background, to live the questions requires that you first look within yourself. Trusting that God is very present and it's at work within you. So you have to look within. This is very difficult because in our world we are constantly pulled away from our innermost self and encouraged to look for answers outside of ourselves. When the questions come, what we tend to do is try to drown those questions out in any way that we can. I mean drown them out. Whatever it takes to try to make the questions go away, our fears go away. We look for anything outside of ourselves. You know, we'll sit and play video games for 18 hours a day, just pizza and Mountain Dew, you know. We'll spend the night watching online pornography. We'll spend our days consumed anything rather than look within ourselves for the answers, rather than really ask the questions. So you can't do that. And we know that. We've all tried it. And the questions don't go away. Nor do we find any answers. Generally what we find are more questions. Our problems don't go away. We just now have more problems. Okay? So we can't look outside of ourselves. Now look at this. If you're a lonely person, you have no inner rest to ask or wait or listen. You crave people in hopes that another will bring you answers. You want them here and now. So anybody, and I've seen this so often, people will become desperate and they will run to this church and this preacher and that preacher and every YouTube video they can watch and every book they can read, looking for answers. And you want to say, you know what, slow down. Slow down. Because the answers aren't out there. The answers are in here. You're not going to find them out there. You're going to find them when you get quiet and you really begin to ask and you really begin to seek the one who holds the answers. This is what's required of us. I love this statement by Maria Rilke. She says this, and look at this quote. She says, I want to beg you as much as I can to be patient toward all that is unresolved in your heart. I want to beg you to be patient and try to love the questions themselves. Try to love the questions themselves. Do not seek answers which cannot be given because you would not be able to live them. Oh my goodness, that statement alone. There are some questions you're not prepared to live the answer. That you're not prepared now to understand. And so what do we do? What do we do? She says this. She says the point is to live everything. Live the questions now. Live them. Live them now. Perhaps you will then gradually, without noticing it, live along some distant day into the answer. See, you keep living it. You keep living it. And we all know people who have come to that place where the questions become overwhelming, the voices won't stop shouting, and they give up on life. They choose an alternate path. They take their own life. And they will never live into the answers. They end their life at 25 not realizing they've got another 55 years to live. To find the answers. To experience the good that is in life. To experience the joys that come in living. To know God. To know His peace. To experience His joy. And all of that is available to us, but not if we end the journey. Are you listening to me? Not if we give up on life. Not if we just quit. She says, I'm begging you Just live the questions. And someday in the future, you'll find you might just live long enough to find the answers. Just keep going. One more quote by Henry Nouwen. The quest for meaning can be extremely frustrating and at times even excruciating, precisely because it does not lead to ready answers but to new questions. When we realize that the pain of the human search is a necessary growing pain, did you get that? You see, if there was no question, you would not be seeking an answer. The question is meant to be painful. The question is meant to haunt you. The question won't leave you alone because the question demands an answer. The question is been permanently embedded in us. You know, there's a verse that kind of explains this in Ecclesiastes. The Bible talks about there's an emptiness in you. There's an emptiness in you that nothing can fill. God actually designed you with the emptiness. In this way, He designed you with the questions so that they would plague you, so that you couldn't get them out of your head, so that day in and day out you would live with these questions in hopes that in time you would, through all the pain of the human search, that you would find the answers. You see, when we realize that the pain of the human search is a necessary growing pain, we can accept as good the forces of human spiritual development and be grateful for the journey on the long walk of faith. Be grateful for the journey. You're not alone. This is important. You're not alone on that walk. Okay? You're not alone on that walk. That God is with you on that journey. That the journey's long. So think of it. So this series is really about this. It's about understanding the centrality of faith. And we're going to unpack that and what it means. What it means to believe. And to have confidence. And to trust. What it means to be loved. That's faith. What it means, and I'm going to say that again, to be able to believe. To have trust. To have confidence. To be loved. This is faith. This is faith. And what we want to do in this series is to concentrate on this faith, on the long walk of life, because let me tell you something, I almost hesitate using this title, A Long Walk. You know, there are times, and I have felt it myself, in which you think of life and you think it's been a long walk. It's been a really hard journey. But it's faith. It's faith that makes it worth living. It's actually faith that makes it a joy and not a hell. Are you listening to me? It's faith that gives it meaning. It's faith where we find the purpose. It's faith where our answers come. It's faith on this long walk. You see, life and the answers to life's most important questions, they will begin and they will end in faith. They will begin and they will end in faith. So let's try, and every week we're going to be working on defining faith. Okay? And what it is. Faith is something that is believed, especially with a strong conviction. Something that is believed. I believe it. But faith is more than belief in something. Faith is belief in someone. That's huge. That's really important. It's not just belief in something. It's belief in someone. I see it's a lot easier to believe in someone. If you know them, right? If you really know them, it's a lot easier to believe in someone than something. It's less esoteric. Now it's more tangible. Now I realize that my faith is not in my own belief, but it's in who I believe. Right? It's a person. Now that helps. I think that helps when we think of faith as someone. And understand it's more than beliefs in belief. Than my own. You know, we tell ourselves, we work it up. I believe. But I don't know that produces any more faith. It honestly doesn't. I think that's more of a, nervous whistling in the dark, It's like, I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. I can do this. And you're just trying to convince yourself that it's going to be okay. Don't confuse faith with some kind of a self-help, right? The positive belief, the power of positive belief. That's only going to take you so far because you're going to reach the end of you. And some of you are going to reach the end of you pretty quickly. But there is something beyond us. And you never reach the end of him. See, our faith then is in this person. Now, really important, and we're going to touch on this next week as well, but really important that you get this. The definition of faith contains two aspects that are really important. Two aspects. Number one is intellectual assent or trust. Okay? Intellectual assent is believing something's true. My mind believes that it's true. And then trust. Trust is actually relying on the fact that something is true. Relying on it, acting as if it's true. Now, one of the examples that sometimes is given is the idea of a chair. Now, I have a chair, and intellectually, I believe that this chair was designed for a person to sit in, okay? For a person to sit in. Looking at it structurally, I believe that it'll hold my weight. I'm a pretty big guy, and there have been a few chairs that I have sat in that have disappointed. That has happened. Some of those chairs, plastic chairs made in other countries, and you sit on them, they just go, okay. But, listen, this is really important. So intellectually, I recognize this is a chair, and I agree that it's designed to support the weight of a person who sits in it. Oh, but sitting in it, that's another matter. I believe it's a chair. It looks like a sturdy chair. See, this is where a lot of people are at with their faith. Intellectually, yes. But you don't have faith in this chair until you sit in it. Now, that's where trust comes in. Trust. See, intellectually, I can believe it's a chair. Intellectually, I can believe that it's structurally sound. But it is not faith until I sit. Now, that is faith. It is an intellectual, and listen, nobody's asking you to check your intellect at the door. We want you to think. We want you to ask the questions. We want you to seek the solutions. But at some point in time, it has to be more than just your intellect. At some point in time, your faith has to be trust, and that trust has to be demonstrated in how now you live your life. We have a lot of people who want to come to Jesus because they believe, listen, they believe he died on the cross for their sin. That he was a substitutionary sacrifice. That each one of you, each one of us has sinned against God and deserve his judgment. But Christ stepped in and became a sacrifice for us. He died in our place. And a lot of us think, that sounds like a pretty good deal. Intellectually, that makes a lot of sense. But you know what? Really giving him your life? Really trusting him with your days, your past, your present, and your future? Really submitting the rest of your life to him requires not just an intellectual kind of agreement or understanding that the Scripture is true, but it requires real belief in the real Christ and his power to transform your life. then you trust that he will not collapse beneath you, that he won't let you down, that he will hold you up. Faith requires trust. That's what it's about, really. It's about trusting. It's about choosing to trust. Faith is about understanding, believing that what God says is actually real and true. Now, this is important. That what God says is real and true, and everything else is a lie. Everything you see, everything you think, everything your friends say is a lie if it contradicts God's word. Because you believe in God, and therefore you believe in everything that he says. Your faith, see, listen, and this is important. Your faith is not in just nothing. People want to tell us today that our faith is in nothing. No, our faith is in something. Our faith is in something eternal. Our faith is in someone who created everything around you. He is more real than reality itself. He is the author of real. He created real. He is true. He is truth. Now, once you do this, see, you establish you on an unshakable and immovable foundation. How can you be moved? What could life possibly do? How could this be taken from you? As long as you can maintain trust in God, can God fail? No, God cannot fail. God does not fail, cannot fail, will not fail. And so, we demonstrate our trust in him. We demonstrate our trust in him in the way that we live our lives. That we just choose to believe that what God says about life is right. And that everything that I've believed about life that contradicts him and his word is a lie. That's a bit unsettling, isn't it? That maybe everything you've believed about life is wrong. Okay. Well, you could continue on in your own strength, in the power of your own intellect. But you've not been able to answer those questions thus far. You've not been able to find real meaningful solutions to your problems so far. Apart from him, well, here's where we're at. Here's where we're at. And so God invites us to trust him. Now, I want you to see this real quick. I'm not going to go much longer. Faith, and when we ask the question, what is faith? We first have to understand that it's a gift. That it's a gift. That it's, and it's actually important that you understand that it's a gift because, you know, if I were to ask my friend here, would you give me a bottle of water? Sure. Give me a bottle of water. Would you give me another bottle of water? You don't have any. That presents a problem. Okay? She can only give me what she has. I can only ask her, okay, I can only ask her for what she's capable of giving. And when it comes to faith, God expects from us faith, but if we do not have faith, then it would be wrong for him to expect it. You see what I'm saying? God's given you a means for faith. He has given you the ability to believe. He's given you the capacity, the ability to believe outside of our own reality. Now that's important, okay? I know it's a little philosophical, but God has given you the ability to believe outside of your reality. Okay? Now, how many of you believe in gravity? You can't see it, right? You can't see it, but you know it's real. Okay? Every time you stumble and leave your feet, you find yourself on the floor. It's real. Gravity is real. You can't see it. You can't feel it per se. You can't touch it. But you know that it's real. It's outside of your reality. I mean, if I ask you the question, you know, How many of you believe that you have a nose? Touch it. You can touch it. You saw it in the mirror. You believe it's still there. This is your reality. And it's not difficult to believe in your reality. All right, if you don't believe in your reality, you need to see a therapist about that. A psychologist, psychiatrist, you need serious help if you don't believe in your own reality. But to believe beyond your reality, that's a much more challenging thing, a much more difficult thing. But God gives us the ability to believe beyond our reality, to believe in gravity, to believe in the wind, to believe in tomorrow. That's even just believing in tomorrow, that the sun will come up and the sun will set. God gives us the ability to believe. 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 1, Peter writes a letter, and he says, "This is a letter from Simon Peter, a slave, an apostle of Jesus Christ. I'm writing to you who share the same precious faith we have." Peter says, you have the same faith I have. Peter says, you have the same faith I have. This faith was given to you because of the justice and fairness of Jesus Christ, our God and Savior. This faith was given to you. The same faith Peter had was given to you. I doubt very many of you walked in here today thinking, I have the same faith Peter had. But you do. Now, what you do with it, obviously, what you do with that faith is what makes the difference, the distinction. Romans 12, verse 3. Romans 12, verse 3 says, "For I say, through the grace given to me, to everyone who is among you, don't think of yourselves more highly than you ought to think, but think soberly, as God has dealt each one a measure of faith." Each one of us has been given a measure of faith. You've been given the ability to believe. Now, what you choose to believe, again, will make all the difference, but you've been given the ability to believe. We know that to everyone God has given a measure of faith, the ability to believe, the ability to look to Him, the ability to trust in Him. But again, it's what we do with that faith that matters. You can believe. You can have faith. I want you to hear that. You can have faith. You can believe. Now, Ephesians 2:8. Let's look at this one. I'm going to begin to wind down. Ephesians 2:8 says, "For it is by grace you have been saved through faith, and this not from yourself, it is a gift from God." Now, a lot of times people will point to this and say, see, faith here is a gift from God. Now, it'd be easy for me to use this verse as a proof text, but that's actually not what this verse is saying. The gift here is not a reference to faith. The gift here is a reference to the salvation. Now, I want you to get this part. It's really important. You have been given faith, the ability to believe. But it's important to see the outcome of that faith is salvation. Beginning, first and foremost, the outcome of your faith is meant to be salvation. You are meant to believe in a gospel message. You are meant to believe in the God who loves us each and every one. You are meant to believe in the fact that He sent His Son, His only Son, to die on the cross for you. You are meant to believe that and to receive the gift that is salvation. That's the beginning point. You have been given a gift of faith, the power to believe. You can choose to believe in God. You can choose to believe in His Son, Jesus Christ. You can choose to believe in the power of the cross, or you can choose not to. But here's the promise. To everyone who believes, God saves. To everyone who believes, God saves. The reason in which faith or belief is given is so that we could once again reconnect our lives to the Creator. That we would have a power to choose Him. That we would have the power to choose the life that He came to give. That we would have the power, the ability. God presents you with a choice, and you cannot escape this thing, this faith. There's no way to escape it. There's no way to escape. What you do with faith matters. What you do with that faith matters. You could choose to reject God. You could choose to place your faith in self and your own power to save you. You could choose that. You would be wrong. But you have that choice. Or you can choose to surrender yourself, and in doing so, be saved. Now see, it's not just a mental. It's not just, well, I grew up hearing these stories, and yes, I believe in God, because the alternative is not, doesn't sound like a good idea. I fear the alternative. It has nothing to do with that. We choose to believe in God because He is who He says He is. We choose to believe in Him because He loves us and has sacrificed Himself for us. We choose. But this is not just an intellectual decision you make. This is a trust. Listen, I'm not asking you today, every one of us, I'm not asking you today just to agree with me. That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking today, will you trust Him? Will you trust Him with your life? Will you trust Him? Increasingly, more and more and more and more, will you trust Him? Now look, as I close, I want you to close your eyes just for a minute. Because I want to ask you a question. On your journey, wherever you're at on that long walk, whatever twists and turns life has taken, whatever ups and downs, have you put your trust in Him? Have you made a conscious decision to surrender your life to Him, to trust Him with your life, to join Him, to invite Him to join you on that journey? You have the capacity and power to believe. Will you act on that belief? Have you acted on that belief? Really placed your trust in Him? Really made Him the master of your life? Really surrendered your past, your present, and your future, everything to Him? Your life is not your own. And if you've not done that, I'm inviting you today on that long walk. Don't take another step. Don't let another day go by. Join yourself to Christ. If you're here and you're saying, Pastor, I've never really done that, then I want to. I'm not going to embarrass you. I won't ask you to come down here or anything. I won't do anything.